Hey, internet bestie. Periods are something so many of us deal with on a monthly basis, but rarely do we stop to think about the consequences of the choices we make each and every month. It's estimated that close to 20 billion one-time use menstrual products end up in landfills each and every year in the US alone. That's a lot of products. Which is why in this video, we're going to be looking at some zero waste period care options that are going to be helpful for you. 5 in particular, and we're also going to get into the pros and cons of each. Okay, so before we dive in a couple seconds, here's my really quick disclaimer. This video is in no way to make you feel bad for your current product choices at all. I simply want to educate you about the zero waste reusable period care options that are out there on the market. So don't beat yourself up. Let's do this. So the first one I want to get into is reusable pads. And a reusable pad works very similar to a regular pad where you place it into the crotch part of your underwear and it absorbs your menstrual flow. And there are so many options available for you. Of course, you have your standard cotton ones, but there are also some really cool ones on the market with some new patented technology that have like 4 to 5 different layers to create more absorbency in them. Dame and Knix are some that come to mind. But you can also go on Amazon and type in reusable pads and you'll find a whole list of colorful options. And that brings us to our first pro, that there is such a wide variety, different colors, different styles to suit you. And one of the pros to using reusable pads is that it is something that is very familiar. Most people have used a pad before. So when it comes to using the product, there isn't a very steep learning curve. Most people are familiar with pads and how they work, which is why they're a great option for those who are starting to lean more into zero waste menstrual care. Unlike a traditional pad, because this one is zero waste, you will be reusing them. And that's a theme you're going to see with all the products we're talking about today, a reusable product. However, with the pads and with another we're going to be talking about in a short bit, there is the thing that you have to wash it. And some people find that as a con. They don't like the idea of the blood-soaked reusable pad mixing with the rest of their laundry. Now, there are some ways around this, of course. You can wash them separately and wash by hand, but the reality is it actually doesn't stain the rest of your clothes. Just like if you scraped your knee and your jeans got a little blood on them or got some blood on them and you put them in the washer with the rest of your clothing, it's not going to damage any of the other clothing. However, I do understand that is a concern and it may be a turn off for some people, so I wanted to include that in the con section. Another con of reusable pads is that while the technology is getting better to create higher absorbency, it still doesn't quite compare to what people are used to when it comes to the higher absorbency one-time use pads. So for someone who has a heavy flow, using a reusable pad alone may not be the way to go. And while this next thing is not really a con, but some people may be bothered by it, and that's that a reusable pad is likely to get stained. There are some that are black, which is great, and then you aren't able to see the stain. So that's why I'm saying it's not really a con, because you can get one that has a black surface and then you wouldn't see the stains. But if you do love those pretty colorful ones, then they will stain. But all in all, reusable pads are a great option, especially for those who don't have a super heavy flow and they love the idea of using a pad and having that in the underwear, not inserting anything inside of them, then that might be the way you go. Okay, let's get into the second zero waste period product. The second one that you can potentially use to have a zero waste period is incorporating period panties or period underwear. Now, period underwear, sometimes called period panties, work very much similar to your regular underwear. You put them on underneath your clothing. However, the difference is there's a built-in pad in there. In the crotch of the panties tend to have a patented absorbent layer that assists to soak up menstrual flow. And similar to reusable pads, one of the pros for reusable panties is that there are tons of options out there, from overnight shorts and even thongs to give that added protection during the week of your period. There's such a variety to choose from. And of course, there are also some brands that are creating really cute underwear now that have like little pieces of lace in them and all different colors and being seamless. So the options are there. And unlike the pads, you don't have to worry about the staining, because most of the ones I've seen anyway have the black crotch. And this is a thong version of Knix. You can see right here, the part that's actually going to be against your crotch is black. So if you did have any leaking or anything, then it could catch it here. But this is where it brings us to a few of the cons, and similar to pads, one of the cons is on its own, it will not be a great solution for someone who has a heavy flow. While many of the brands say that, it's high absorbency, if you put it to the test of someone who has a real heavy period, none of them will stand up to it, or you'd just be changing them very frequently. So while they are a great option for someone to wear as a backup, I wouldn't recommend them to use alone for someone who has a heavy flow. But that said, they are really great for the very beginning or the end of your period when you have very, very light spotting, because you could go about your day and it just feels like a regular day. You just have your regular underpants on. And there are so many brands with period panties now. You have Ruby Love, you have Knix, you have Salt, you have Knix, and Victoria's Secret. And what's their smaller brand, like their little spin-off? Is it called, I'm saying spin-off like it's a TV show, Pink, that store. They have period panties now too, actually. And so many other brand names that aren't coming to my mind at the moment, but there's tons of options. However, I have to give you all the tea, right? So one of the things that is a huge con for people is that many period panties, in fact, some are estimating to be 65% of the brands out there have harmful chemicals in them, such as PFAS. So these chemicals have allegedly been found in the fabric of period underwear made by many, many companies. And it's been linked to health problems such as decreased fertility or increased high blood pressure, as well as an increased risk of certain types of cancer, according to the United States Environmental Protection Agency. And here's the other thing. Exposure to PFAS has been shown to reduce the immune system's ability to fight infections as well. And the thing is, there's more than 9,000 varieties. So they're mainly used for their water and stain repellent qualities, and these are the characteristics that make them useful for period underwear. That said, PFAS has also been found in your regular household items as well. Items like food packaging and clothing, cosmetics, protein powder, and the list goes on. So you've likely been exposed to them already. This is not something to scare you off, and there are many brands that have run some rigorous tests to ensure that they don't have those chemicals in their products. For example, Salt has period panties, and they recently shared they do multiple third-party tests to avoid these chemicals. So if you are interested in period panties, all is not lost. There are brands that have done the research to ensure that they avoid the harmful chemicals that some brands are using. It's important that you do your research when you're purchasing your period panty to ensure that it is safe for your use. Okay, let's move on to number 3, which is my personal favorite, and that is menstrual cups. So I might be biased here, but Best Period has a menstrual cup, and it's the best. Period. However, menstrual cups are my personal favorite. But before I tell you why, I want to explain exactly how they work. So unlike reusable pads or period panties that absorb your flow, the difference with the menstrual cup is that it collects your menstrual flow. And similar to a tampon, it's inserted inside of you as opposed to being in the crotch of your pants. So now let's get into some of the pros of a menstrual cup. Menstrual cups in general have higher capacity than your traditional pad or tampon would, and especially your reusable pad or period panty would have as well. So on average, most brands' menstrual cups, their largest size, tend to hold close to 30 milliliters, which is about 5 regular pads or tampons absorbency. Our Best Period cup, on the other hand, does have higher capacity than most other brands. So our size 1, which is the smallest size, can hold 6 regular pads or tampons, and our size 2 can hold up to 8. Another pro of a menstrual cup is that if it's properly taken care of, it can last for years, many up to 10 years. So that's a lot of cost savings and environmental savings along the way. And when you are ready to dispose of it, most menstrual cups, including ours, is 100% medical grade silicone. So you're able to torch it and it turns into ash, and you can dispose of it that way so it doesn't have to go back into landfills. However, this isn't an option for many cups that are made out of TPE. Another pro, and as I'm thinking about it, this pro can actually be applied to all of these. You can use them and put them on prior to your period coming on. So if your period app tells you, hey, today may be the day your period's going to start, you can insert the cup in expectation of your period beginning. And the way this is different from some traditional period products, so i.e. tampons, is that it is not recommended that you put in a tampon if you are not currently bleeding. And your tampon's capacity should be the same capacity capacity as your flow. And we'll talk about exactly why in a short bit. But the pro to this is that you can put it in advance. Just like you can put period panties on in advance, and you can also put on your pad, your reusable pad in advance in expectation of your period starting. So add that to those pros too. Another pro is that most people, once they insert it, forget it's even in and forget they're on their period. Now, you can't forget it completely because it should be changed every 12 hours. However, for those 12 hours, people are living their best lives, which is great because it's comfortable. And while I may be biased to the menstrual cup, I'm not blind to some of the cons. So let's get into them. Because I run a menstrual care company that sells menstrual cups as well, I see a lot of the hesitations people have around them. And the number one hesitation they have is straight intimidation. I get it. It's something foreign. You've never used it before. And you're like, I'm sticking this whole thing in my vagina. WTF, what do I do? So one of the biggest cons is that it isn't a familiar product. It isn't like underwear or pads that have been used before. It's something you have to wrap your mind around learning to use. There can be a little bit of a learning curve for some people when they're trying a menstrual cup. However, most people, when they give it a go, a real honest go, and continue to use and learn to create that leak-free seal, most people say they will never go back. And another drawback for some people is that they don't want to insert any period product into their vagina, and that's fine. There are people who just stick to pads because that's what they're used to, and I get that. So if you are someone who isn't comfortable or familiar with inserting a product and you are not willing to learn or try it, then this may not be the product for you. You really do have to be comfortable with your body because you are folding the cup, creating a small insertion similar to a tampon, and inserting it in. It pops open and it sits inside of your vagina. You then have to pinch the base and pull down to remove it, dump out the full contents, clean it up, and reinsert. And that may be something that turns some people off. What I found though is that many new cup users have come back saying how much they've learned about their body since using a menstrual cup. For instance, you feel that when you're putting it in your vagina, you realize it isn't straight up and down like many people think. It actually slants towards your spine. Other people learned the positioning of their cervix as a result of using a menstrual cup. They had never known it was tilted before, or that they had a high or low cervix. Other people, when they're using it and they're feeling around to open up the cup, may find a bump or lump that they want to get checked out. So you learn so much about your body through using a menstrual cup. So if you are someone who's curious and not intimidated to give it a try, then by all means go for it. Menstrual cups are great, but I get that they're not for everybody. But if menstrual cups sound intriguing to you, maybe you're cup curious or you've used cups before and you love them yourself because you've watched this far and we're pretty much best friends now, I'm going to put a special code on our website at bestperiod.com for you to use, Internet Bestie, for 15% off. You can get either one of our sizes for our menstrual cups or our cup case, or all three. Like, go for it. We sell our cup case separately because most brands just have those cloth baggies that are lint producing. They get wet, they get dirty, and ain't nobody got time for that. So you can get all of those things 15% off. Okay, let's move on to number 4. Number 4 is menstrual discs. Similar to menstrual cups, menstrual discs are inserted inside the vagina and they collect your menstrual flow instead of absorbing it, like a pad, tampon, or reusable period panty would. But there are some differences between a disc and a cup. One, discs tend to hold even more than most cups, and they're also positioned slightly differently. So I don't know if this is going to focus or if it's even going to reflect on my ring light. If you see this, that means it made the cut. Okay, so I have a menstrual cup in here right now. You would see the cup is sitting below the cervix and the cup is here in the vagina and the stem is still within the vulva range, right? It's not sticking out, but the stem is here. So with the disc, it'll be sitting in this area here, right behind the pelvic bone, and you will not see it coming out in the vagina. Okay, editing me here, regretting doing those demonstrations because they were trash. So here's a much clearer version of it that I've gotten off of Period Nirvana's website. They're such a great resource for things like discs and learning about cups as well in more detail. But it's my hope that with this, it's just a little clearer for you exactly the differences between where they sit and where they're positioned. This disc, however, does come with the little string that's attached to it. Most don't have that though. So discs do hold a bit more and they are positioned in a slightly different way, which gives them some pros and cons. So they'd have a lot of similarities with menstrual cups when it comes to the pros and the cons. But an additional one for the pro would be higher capacity, and an additional one for the con would be for those who have super high cervixes. Many people have difficulty removing the disc.
And they do involve a whole lot more of maneuvering to get in and take out, which tends to turn many people away from using them.
Now, there are some discs that have pieces you can grab and little tabs that make it easier for this, but it's not foolproof. And if you're someone who's intimidated by menstrual cups, you're likely intimidated by these too, because there's slightly a bit more of a learning curve with discs. So if this isn't your thing, I get it as well. However, there are people who swear by menstrual discs and don't want to use anything else. So if you're someone who wants the freedom of not having to change for 12 hours, wants a higher capacity option, doesn't have a super high cervix, then it might be a perfect option for you. Now, this next zero waste period care product is something that you may not have heard of before, and that is a reusable tampon applicator. And it sounds just like what it is. It's replacing the traditional plastic one-time use applicators that come with many tampon products in the US and Canada especially. I know that in a lot of parts of Europe, that most of them are applicator free. So now I'm curious, where are you from, and in your country, what tampons do you see majority on shelves? Are you seeing the plastic applicator still? Are you seeing more brands transition to the paper? Or are you seeing just strictly the no applicator versions? So some brands that come to mind when I think of the reusable applicator are Dame and Green Umbrella. So the pro to this is you're using something that's likely very familiar to you, which would be a tampon, and you're able to incorporate something that is zero waste, which is the applicator. But many may say the con for this is that you're still using a tampon, which will likely be thrown away and end up in landfills. But there are some tampons out there now that are biodegradable. But on the other side of that, tampons have their own set of issues that include things like increased risk of TSS if the absorbency doesn't match your actual flow. And I have an entire video all about TSS, and if you can even get it from menstrual cups and all the other products we've mentioned here, along with how TSS is caused, how it's treated, the symptoms to look out for, and so much more. So if that's something that's interesting to you, you're going to want to check that video out here. And really briefly, I'm going to talk about something quickly because it does relate directly to the tampon use. One of the ways TSS is created with tampons is if the absorbency doesn't match the flow and you pull it out, it can create little micro abrasions or micro tears in the vagina that would allow the bacteria to seep in. And in addition to that, tampons, of course, have been linked to things like pH imbalance, dryness, and a host of other things. So if tampons aren't your thing, I get it. However, it's important to understand that every little bit matters. And if you are currently using a traditional plastic applicator, this may be the solution for you. Another con that I've seen people talk about when it comes to the reusable applicator is that they tend to be pretty pricey. However, I will kind of disagree with that. And I know price is relative to culture and, status and all the other pieces that are warped into this, but taking a step back, I want to think about reusability in general. And oftentimes we're spending money on these one-time use products, but they're small hits, right? But over time, that adds up. And these other products may cost a little more upfront, $20 to $50 for some. However, in the long run, it actually saves you money. So while I understand it could be a bit of an investment at the beginning, it definitely becomes a savings very quickly. And of course, while I'm here talking about pros and cons of reusable zero waste period products, there's also pros and cons to the one-time use products. And the pros are why people use it, right? It's convenient, it's inexpensive, it's familiar. And some of the cons include chemicals, the pH disturbance, dryness, and TSS. But at the end of the day, very few things have as much impact as the small changes we make to our daily habits. And the more we lean to sustainability, the more we're doing not just for ourselves and for those around us, but for our environment as a whole. That said, I don't want you beating yourself up about the one-time use menstrual products you've used in the past or that you're currently using. We've all been there. I don't think there's going to be a single person who's watched this video, unless it's like a young Gen Z and that's how they were brought up, but I doubt there's a single person watching this right now that has never in their life used a regular pad or a tampon before, one or the other. None of us have been perfect. And listen, I get it, they're convenient. As I said in the beginning, this is about education. It's not about perfection. Listen, I truly believe that we're all doing the best that we can given our current circumstances and our current knowledge set that we have. And as the late, great Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. So my challenge to you is that you make a commitment to just try to do better. That may mean grabbing one of the products I mentioned today, or it may just mean using one of these products or multiple of these products on occasion. That would still limit the amount of one-time use products you're currently using. Yes, you heard me right. Even using a combination of reusable, zero waste products along with one-time use products does make a difference, because it means cutting down on your usage, which is ultimately cutting down on the products that end up in landfills. And the reality is there are people who don't have access to the products we're talking about today. Some that make their pads, or as they call them, rags, by hand. And that's why we personally, and when I say we, I mean the company Best Period, we donate cups all the time. For every cup that's purchased, one is donated, but we also give the option for people to donate cups on our site to allow us to help end period poverty too. Everyone is dealing with their own unique sets of challenges, and I don't think we should be judging each other based on what we're using. Rather than being so judgmental, we should stand back and ask ourselves, how can we make the difference, right? Whether that means changing our products, whether that means educating people, whether that means, buying a product for someone else, a reusable product, whatever it is. But let's always reflect our judgment back on ourselves and ask ourselves how we can do better. Okay, I've been talking a lot. I hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed creating it. By the way, my name is Gaynette Jones, founder and CEO of Best Period. As a reminder, you can use the code Internet Bestie on our website to get 15% off. That way I'll know you came through YouTube and that you've watched through to the end of this video. In fact, leave a comment below and put Internet Bestie so I know you are here and you are riding. If you enjoyed this video or learned anything from it at all, be sure to show it some love. It may sound like vanity metrics when YouTubers say, give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend or whatever, but it truly does help the channel and it helps other people like you find and benefit from the information. So whether you give this video a thumbs up or you've just watched through to the end, I truly appreciate you coming by and I hope you stay around a while. We'll chat next time. Bye-bye. So unlike reusable pads or period care underwear, menstrual cups actually, wow. So similar to menstrual cups, menstrual discs, what did I say? Menstrual menstrual discs. Menstrual discs. Menstrual discs. Menstrual discs. Okay. Why is my phone vibrating? Should have been on airplane mode. That is my fault.